Hello, and welcome to our Resource Manager presentation. Today's presentation is focusing on the requisitions area of Resource Manager. Please look for other YouTube videos on other aspects of Resource Manager, such as timesheets, expense reports, and integration with leave tracking and overtime. Today, we're focusing on the different types of requisitions that can be raised, specifically the purchase requisition capability within Resource Manager. We have a number of Sage 300 clients and prospects who've approached us in the past about finding an easy and efficient way to provide remote access to Sage 300 for raising requisitions that get approved for either purchases, AP invoices, item usage, or even custom requisitions that allow you to create a workflow approval around master file or transaction changes within Sage 300. The process is virtually identical between all of these requisition types, so we're going to focus on the purchase requisition today to highlight how you can raise either a purchase request or PO from a web portal. When we talk about Resource Manager, we like to think of it as a hybrid application in the sense that we have a Windows back office SDK application that also integrates through a web portal for individuals to raise purchase requests, item usage, AP invoice, or custom requisitions. Now, as you can see here, the licenses for the other requisition capabilities has expired, so we're going to talk about purchase requisition today as a way of streamlining the generation and approval of purchase transactions within Sage 300. We're also going to highlight for you the integration for different types of transactions by using login access through the web portal. Now, in Sage 300, as you're probably aware, you consume a LAN pack license when you open up or log into Sage 300. And because many organizations want to be able to extend the reach of Sage 300 out into the field where operations people are, it gets expensive to have to buy LAN pack licenses for people outside the accounting and finance departments. So by creating an employee self-service portal through the norming portal, you're able to provide low-cost access without people actually logging into Sage 300. They log in as a user within the portal to raise the requisition, get it approved online, and then it will automatically populate the requisition transactions within purchase requests. So the requisition list will highlight for us the entries that have been recorded and approved that will generate POs or purchase requests. So this is what we're going to be showing you in today's presentation. But just so you know, you can specify different types of purchase requests in the system. And this means that you can also configure how you want the system to operate. As I mentioned, you can either have the Resource Manager requisition create a PO requisition entry in the Purchase Orders module, or it can just create a PO. And that would depend on whether you're raising a large number of purchase requests that you would then set up as requisition entries so that you could consolidate multiple requisitions onto one PO for the same vendor. But if your volume's a little bit lower, or you're typically buying from different vendors all the time, you can have the system automatically generate the PO off of the requisition in Resource Manager. You can also specify whether these are job related for PJC or norming project purposes, whether you want to use budget controls, because there's a whole budget capability built into Resource Manager where you can specify dollar value limits, and you can say that an approval is required, or you're going to create an error message if they go over budget, or just give them a warning that they have gone over budget. And then you can also incorporate specific vendors. You could say just specified vendors, or all vendors are able to be purchased from. You could list specific items if you're buying inventory items. You can also incorporate the use of quotes in the system to ensure that you're getting the correct number of quotes in order to validate that people have done their due diligence in order to create proper purchase transactions. So with these transaction types, you'll see that I've got one that's job related here. which specifies only 4 vendors. And you might say it has to have a valid number of quotations. You can also create different types that might be using budget capability, and these are because we're buying specific items and we want to watch that we don't overbuy for inventory purposes. But we're using all vendors, and then we could of course specify a default vendor if you'd like. So these are just some of the options that we have to create different types of purchase entries within the system that allow you to control who gets access to the system and what types of purchases they're able to record. So as we do this, we'll move over to the portal and show you some of the entries we can handle through the ESS portal. So this is the hybrid aspect of it, where we're integrating a web portal to a Windows back office. So if I log in as an employee, notice that I can choose from a number of different Sage 300 companies that I can integrate the portal to, and then I can raise a purchase requisition from the portal. Now this will also show me historical information for previous purchase requests that I've made that have been approved. I might have some that are partially rejected or awaiting approval, and some that I've started but haven't submitted for approval yet. Now I've also got the ability to create a new purchase requisition, and notice that it defaults to the standard type of purchase that I've recorded in the system. So these are job related. I've got a requisition date and a date required. So I could say if I don't get this by next Friday the 20th, I don't want it. And then I've got an expiration date to say that if I don't get this by next Friday, I'm going to just have this purchase request expire. You could link it into a specific location if you want to. You could link it to a specific vendor if you want to. You can force the entry of notes or comments on a line item. There's lots of different ways that we can configure the system to make sure that it's doing what you would like it to do for you. Now in my case, I'm integrated with project and job cost, but just so you know, it's not necessary. The reason why is because in terms of my setup options, I've created a sample company that is integrated into the project and job cost module. But if I'm not integrated to the projects in Resource Manager or project and job cost within Sage 300, I wouldn't have to have the contract information on my PO request. So as you can see here, I can integrate with various aspects of Sage 300, and in terms of the processing, I can manage different types of transactions, and I can break them out by division, region, or department, or cost center, and I can use approval workflows with email notifications. So to do that, I would create approval workflows over here by document type. In other videos that we've created for Resource Manager, you might have seen the expense report or timesheet presentations. You can create different types of workflows for those documents, but we can also do that for purchase requests or AP invoice requests. And what this allows you to do is determine which organization and which individuals participate in the workflow. Supervisor is a default from the employee master, where we create a register within Resource Manager to define some basic profile information about the employee. We also have the concept of approver groups, where you could set up an approver group of 3 or 4 managers and say as long as 1 or 2 or more of these people do the approval, then we're okay with that purchase request. And in the case where you're integrated to project and job cost, we could have a contract manager approving those expenses before they actually get submitted to the project. We use email as an alert function, so you can send out emails to approve, submit, and reject these types of entries, and the email templates will allow you to go in and customize the language around a particular type of purchase approval, reminder, or rejection. And then we allow you to embed different types of variables so that you can specify what kind of information, for instance, if it's rejected, the notes for why it's rejected, or if you're asking for manager approval, we embed a URL hot link in the body of the email to make sure that the manager who's on the road could just simply pick up this email on their smartphone, click on the URL, and then be able to incorporate an approval process right from their smartphone. So the The approval portal and the entry of these purchase requests can be done on a notebook computer, a tablet, or an iPhone or Android device. There are mobile apps that are available through iTunes and the Google Store. So once you've licensed the portal, you can choose the deployment method that you would like to use. Now, because it's a web form, we can also customize the type of information you include on the purchase request form. So as you're creating the groups that are able to enter requisitions, you can choose to hide or show different types of information based on the columns that you want to appear. You can do that as well for your AP invoice requisitions. You can also modify the field labels for each of the column headings by using the data dictionary. So you'll be able to access field level information and modify those to something that more aptly describes the terminology that you use. Notice as well that we have translation capability, so we can also publish the portal in different language sets depending on whether your employees speak French, Spanish, or other languages other than English. So we give you lots of flexibility in terms of how you can configure the system and language sets and customization for the forms in the portals. So moving back to the employee self-service portal, let's walk you through some different types of purchase transaction entries. And as I mentioned, I am integrated to project and job costs, so you're going to see me utilizing contract, project, and category. But this is also going to highlight the different types of purchases that we can record for you. So as an example, we have item number here, but item in this case, because we're talking about labor charges, is me making a request to purchase labor from an internal source, one of our employees. So we're actually utilizing internal labor to record an entry as a purchase request. And so this would be set up against vendor 1200, and there's a unit cost with an extended cost. And then we can add comments or instructions in here and insert those instructions and say, please report to group B at 8 a.m., something like that. And that would then signify that there are instructions there. And then if there's a link, we'll show this in another transaction, we can link attachments to each detail line within the purchase request. Now, another type of purchase might be miscellaneous distribution codes. So this is where I'm using the distribution codes within Sage 300, and that might be because I'm using a miscellaneous charge code. So this is a miscellaneous purchase. So what I'm referring to is, if you're familiar with the distribution codes in AP, this is a defined distribution code called miscellaneous purchases. And what this does is it allows me to use this description to determine the GL account I would like the transaction to be posted to. So the AP distribution code is going to determine the GL account that I hit for my miscellaneous purchase. All right, and then this is an entry. Now I can, of course, change the quantity to 2 and notice that my extended cost gets updated to 2 times 64. So again, these are all ways that we can change what we're purchasing or raising a request for. So far we got labor in an AP invoice type of expense. And at this point, let's add a note here, and let's say that this is for the miscellaneous project in Group A. And then we could browse and pick up a PDF document as support, and you would see that. Now notice that there's also a link here. The link would show us a link to a website. So if there's a catalog pricing item, then you can also publish a link to that catalog. So again, we'll come back to the same project and we'll choose a slightly different category code. And you notice here that we've got different types of, let's say, do this one here, 1012. And the category in this case is going to be the strip and sand equipment. Okay, so this would be an example of where we might want to buy a capital asset. So in this case, I'm purchasing a capital asset. And again, I'm going to say we bought 100 of these and create a larger extended cost amount. And in this case, I might want a link, let's say, to a particular website. So let's just say it was norming.com.cn. And then I would have that link embedded on the detail line. So when the approver's coming through to do the approval, he can verify something about that particular fixed asset that we're buying. So we can raise a requisition for internal labor, for expensible service items, for capital equipment, and then, of course, we would want to do something, let's say, for a particular inventory item. So in that case, let's say we're just going to do stock office supplies. So it could be actual inventory for resale, or it could be something as simple as office supplies. So let's do stationery. So this is a material cost class in a PJC project, which is also tied to inventory control. So now my item is an actual item within inventory control. So the IC item number, let's say it was a notepad, and you see when I choose the item, the requisition capability can show you a picture of that item, and that can appear in the bottom of the screen, and when I put the cursor over that, it shows me a picture of that item. So I can embed catalog details about the item because we allow you to build that as part of creating the item within Resource Manager. And notice as well that we'll show you by location, for all locations, quantity on hand, quantity committed, what's already on PO, and what's on a purchase request. So here again, I might have a link. I've already got an image attached here, so I might just have a link to the catalog where this is being purchased from, or I might have had to embed a couple of quotations. And if I've got quotations, then I could check against the quotation and make sure that I've got the valid number of quotes to confirm that the purchase is legitimate. And then again, I've got the attachment that I added at the line level. I could add another one if I wanted to. So at each individual line item, let's say, why not, we'll just choose this one and say, this is the contract for material purchases, and then browse, pick up another PDF, and save that with the entry. So that's marked with the little red circle with the hash mark in it. Okay, so there's 4 different types of purchases. We've got labor, we've got miscellaneous service expenses, we've got capital equipment, and we've got inventory items. Any type of purchase that you need to raise a requisition for in PO could be handling different types of entries for you. We also have an import capability where you could have a source file from a catalog, and then you could import that in by creating the template, and it would populate these line items for you. So we're going to go ahead and save this as a requisition entry and then submit it into a workflow. When we submit the transaction into a workflow, it creates a PR, a purchase request number, for Resource Manager audit trail purposes. This won't be the same purchase request number as what you see within Sage 300 purchase orders. It's simply an audit control document number within Resource Manager for our requisition entry. We do show you the approval audit trail. So if you wanted to see how many people need to approve this, they would all be specified here. If managers were away, they could be substituted by other managers, and we'll mention that just briefly. But essentially, everything you have now on this purchase request is available for approval. And if you wanted to print off a hard copy, you could print off a hard copy. So I'm going to exit out as Maryland. I will just touch briefly on the substitution capability that I mentioned there. So if a manager was going to be away for the week, they could have someone do the approval for them. Or if somebody was trying to get a requisition in that was time sensitive and couldn't get to the office, they could create a substitution and say, can you please raise that purchase request for me? So that is possible. It also means that it's possible to have one person manage purchase requisitions for a group of other people who don't get access to the internet for some reason. So I'm going to sign out as Marilyn, and then I'm going to sign back in as Freddie, who was the manager who was supposed to do the approval. Now at this point, I want to highlight the flexibility in how we might notify Freddie to to approve this purchase request. Of course, in his ESS or Employee Self-Service Portal, he sees that there's a document that needs to be approved through the To Approve list, and that is a purchase request that was made today, PR 30, October 13th. Now, the other way he could get notification was through the email alert. So you recall that when we talked about the approval workflows, the email template for purchase requisitions could have a URL hot link in the body of the email. So when we looked at these purchase requests, there was a reminder to get it approved that it was rejected, or in this case, a reminder to approve it. If this email goes to Freddie and he picks it up on his smartphone, he just clicks on that URL link and it would take him to the portal to do the approval against that purchase request. So that's using the email template feature and the URL hot link in the body of the email. The other way that we could do that is through the admin portal. We showed you some of the other ways that we can use it, doing translations in the data dictionary. We also have something called a to-do list. And the to-do list by Sage 300 Company will show you the documents that have been submitted that need to be approved, one of which is this purchase request PR 30 submitted today. So if Freddie was away and wasn't able to do the approval, and again, it's time sensitive, you could simply flag this and do the approval right here from the administrative portal. Or conversely, you could transfer it to one of the other managers and say, let's let Cynthia approve this purchase request so that we keep the process moving forward. There's no delays in getting the materials or supplies that we need. So you've got three different ways to get these documents approved: through the to-do list on the admin portal, the reminder going through email, or when the manager logs in and sees on their ESS portal the approval console. So in our case, we're going to review that here, and you notice that they're all highlighted to be approved, and we can isolate individual transactions and look at them here. We can see the instructions for this particular line item. We see the extended totals. We notice the link here, so we could click on the link and go to the website to view the information that's being given to us. We also see that there are attachments here for the contract, so I could click on the URL and that would take me to the document, and this document will also be part of the purchase request in Norming Resource Manager in the back office of Sage 300. So all these documents that have been created against the purchase request will be visible and can be reviewed as part of the approval process. I could also check quotations as I'm going through to validate that we're using either the low-cost supplier or the shortest lead time. I could print off a copy for myself. I could say, you know what, I'm not comfortable with this particular purchase, so I'd like Cynthia to take a look at this in addition to myself. So this is where you want to deviate from the normal approval process and add one more manager or transfer it over to have them do an approval because you don't think it's something that you're qualified to approve. And as we're choosing the items, again, we notice that the picture for the catalog item pops up with the information about what's on hand at the location you want to receive it into, but also for all locations. So all this information is visible online during the approval process. And once they're ready, they can just simply say, okay, this looks fine, and this item gets approved. Okay, so these are line item details that are getting approved, and then we could go in and say, well, do we want to approve all of these? Say okay. So as I talked about the fact that we can do approvals at a line level or a document level, it also means you could create dollar value thresholds. So let's say certain purchases below a certain dollar amount need one level of approval, but others need multiple levels of approval. You could have a document where it's got 4 lines like the one we just did, And one manager only sees 2 lines of the 4 because they only have to approve those 2 line items. The other 2 they're not involved in because they're just too low value. So you can create and configure the system to manage those different types of scenarios for you. But essentially what we've done now is we've approved that requisition. So the next time we come in and want to look at the requisition list within Resource Manager, we'll be notified that we have an approved document from the Employee Self-Service Portal that can be transferred and created as a transaction within Sage 300. Now, because of the way we configured the system, it's going to show us not just the requisition here in Resource Manager, but it's going to create the associated PO in Sage 300 purchase orders. So it's transferring PR30, the one that we created today, and it's going to create the PO automatically for me. So you can see one PO was created as well, because that's what I configured the system to do. I could have had it create a purchase request as well, but we chose not to in this case. So the detail here for PR30 in the requisition list of Resource Manager shows the line items, any optional fields, the approval audit trail for what got approved, and the attachments. Remember, we had the attachments assigned in the portal, but they're also pushed back into Sage 300 through Resource Manager and sitting here as supporting documentation plus the approval audit trail on the requisition. Notice as well that we've got all the item numbers, the web link, and the extended totals. But notice as well, we created the PO. All right. So this is a PO that was generated off the approved requisition automatically from the request that was approved in Resource Manager. So there's the PO, PO58, that we created in Sage 300 purchase orders with the appropriate, now again, we're tied to contract project category because we're integrated to PJC. In other cases, you would just see the distribution code or the GL account for a straight purchase. But all the information has come through in a seamless way. Okay, so that's how we can use norming Resource Manager to raise a requisition, get it approved online, and then automatically create the PO or the purchase request within PO. So I showed you the PO from within Resource Manager through the drill up, and obviously you can see it here, PO58, generated from purchase request 30 in Resource Manager, and we bring across the description with the date and the employee's name as part of your audit trail. So using Resource Manager is a very effective way to provide remote access for raising purchase requests or AP invoice requests for that matter, getting them approved online so that only approved transactions are being set up within accounts payable or within purchase orders of Sage 300. And this allows you to streamline the process, get them approved properly, and avoid rekeying of this data in the back office. So accountants can spend more time analyzing the purchase requests and getting them updated and reported as opposed to actually doing the data entry. By using Resource Manager, we're able to push the data entry out to the people who are closest to the source of the transaction, and then we just simply convert the transaction into an approved entry in the database, which allows us to spend more time on analyzing and reporting against that information. We hope you've enjoyed the presentation today on Resource Manager requisitions. We invite your comments and feedback. If you're interested in getting additional information, please speak to your local Sage 300 business partner or contact us through the norming.com website. Thanks very much for your time.